how we normally do it.
Recording in progress.
We tend to do quite a lot of interruptions as we go. Is that okay? But I think quite a lot of people have got this to be at 1 o'clock. So
No
who,
worries.
yeah, a few people have said you guys are a meeting. So I think we might just try and finish by 1 o'clock if we can, and then we run over. I'm not doing anything, so we can stay and have a chat for lunch. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming. It's really nice.
Thank you. So sorry for the delay. Apparently, if technology can't find a way to get me lost, it will. So here I'm here to present a little bit more on the work that I'm currently involved in back in Brazil. This is the title, the very big, large title that I did not want to make the presentation title. That is for the project that I have involved. My PI is Ana Osorio, and we are located in Brazil at Mackenzie Presbyterian University. So our project is called The Importance of Social Touch for Infants' Social Emotional Development and Integrating Neuroimaging, Psychophysiological, Endocrine, and Behavioral Evidence. It's quite a long title. And a little bit about me. So I'm not completely unknown person to you. I graduated in psychology. I did my master's in developmental disorders, and I'm currently doing my PhD. I'm in my third year with my PI, that's Dr. Ana Osorio. I'm currently in an internship at the University of Cambridge with Dr. Sarah Lloyd Fox. That's how I got involved here and how I got invited. My previous research topics was behavioral and emotional problems among children and adolescents, and also screen time exposure among infants and also adolescents. My current research topic is social touch, and I work also with NIRS and emotional regulation and maternal and infant relationship. This is how my university looks. So this is where I came from. This is located in São Paulo, Brazil. And I'm going to talk a little bit of the overall project and then focus a little bit more through the time to what I'm actually doing. So our project has two phases. One of is the longitudinal assessment of social emotional development. And we just finished that collection in February this year. It's a longitudinal design. We also have a phase 2 that is planned to start this year, which is hyperscanning of the mother and child interaction. This is NIRS hyperscanning. I'm going to start data collection some point this year as soon as the equipment starts to work back on again.
Yeah, sorry. The slides aren't changing in the Zoom call. Are you able to? Yeah, for some reason, if you run the center line, it's not changing.
Let me try again. Otherwise, I can put in that.
Yeah.
Maybe you can try sharing the screen again.
Is it just really lagging? Or,
No, it's changing when it's on this section, but when you do present and maybe it doesn't get anything.
When you go to share, sometimes you share the screen rather than the specific window.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's sharing that. That's fine. Is that okay, everyone? Yeah, okay. Thank you, sorry.
So I'll be talking more about the phase 1, which is what I'm involved. It's the longitudinal assessment of social emotional development. And we do have 3 time points of visits. And the 6 months and the 10 months are pretty much the same. The only thing that changes is the infant's age. And on that visit, we assess infant's neuroresponse to affective touch with using NIRS. And we have 2 paradigms that we do. It's mom versus an unfamiliar woman touch. And if the baby is calm and happy, we do hand versus spoon touch. We also have plenty of behavioral assessments of mother and child interaction. It's maternal touching behaviors, maternal sensitivity, maternal mindedness, and we have a lot of questionnaires to assess infant development, maternal aspects such as depression and attachment to the baby. And by the 12 months, we have our social emotional outcomes. We have the infant emotional regulation, that we assess through a protocol called LabTab, that it was previously developed by other teams. We were just adapted in our lab. We also have hair cortisol, which is from the infant and the mother. And we have the same questionnaires at the all time points.
What
Um,
is
oh,
a lab tap protocol?
Yeah, it's
Are you gonna
a
get-
emotional regulation protocol that I'll be currently explaining
Okay.
better way. So a bit more of everything we assess. So as I said, NIRS, we do that protocol. This is our real participant, and the first image there, it's the mother condition, and the baby is sitting on that chair. The mom keeps her arm behind the chair, and the experimenter like hides her hand behind the curtain and caresses the baby. This caress is made by us because it has to do some specific characteristics to be considered affective touch specifically. So it has to be in a certain speed, in a certain temperature. So this kind of touch has to be done in a slow, similar to caresses. And if the mother was the one doing it, we wouldn't have much of a standard measurement and could have a bias in our results, which is why we decided the researcher would be doing. But since the mom is the only person that the infant can see, and she's with her arm behind the chair, it gives the baby the illusion basically that the person sitting next to him is the one that is actually doing the touch. And for the unfamiliar woman condition, is exactly the same thing. The only difference is the person sitting next to the baby is one of our researchers that the baby never saw before. And we do the same thing for the hand versus spoon. If the baby is happy, this lasts something around 10 minutes. So sometimes the baby is fine with continue. Sometimes it's like, I'm done, take this cap out of me. And if the baby is happy, we ask the mom to go back, and the mom's sitting next to the baby, and we touch him with the hand and also with a spoon to analyze differences when this touch is made based on temperature, basically.
So sorry, could I, oh, maybe you're gonna get to this actually. Oh no, this was my exact question. I was gonna ask, like, because I guess with NIRS, the brain response takes time to build up, and like with affective touch, how do you have a block design?
Yeah,
I
that's
see.
exactly how we have a block design. We have like baseline conditions, and the baseline is no touch. And it's random. The baseline, it's the same through all the infants, but it's random to the baby, so it's not predicting the touch. And it lasts something around 12 and 20 seconds. And then we have our experimental condition, which is 15 seconds of caressing touch. And then we have another baseline that's also random again. One trial for our validation and for methodological process is basically 3 seconds of the previous baseline, 5 seconds on stimulation, and then 10 seconds of post-stimulant baseline. This is what we analyze, because for the analysis, we do a offline view of the session. We videotape everything, and we check if the baby was not crying during this trial, if the mother did not touch the baby did not touch the mother, not saw the experimenter doing the touch. If something like that happened, we just consider this trial invalid. We need to have at least 3 valid trials per condition to include this participant in our analysis. And we have basically 4 trials per block, and we do 2 blocks with the mother, 2 blocks with the unfamiliar woman. And this is random, so we have always start with the mom, so the baby is not too fuzzy. But then what comes next depends a lot on what's going on in the visit. If the baby is fine and we have good valid data with the mother, then we put the unfamiliar woman, and we can keep it random depending on the baby's will. From our experiences, it's not very easy to do the first one when the baby is 10 months, so we tend to keep those ones, because if you remove the mom and then put them on and remove them on, the baby gets very fuzzy and very annoyed by her absence. Those are the regions of interest that we have. Our equipment has 20 ACE channels, and we spread them across both hemispheres, and we have some somatosensory regions that are basically they're going to be activated according to our hypothesis to any kind of tactical stimulation, but also some social regions that tends to be activated to affective touch but not to other types of touch. This is exactly what we are basing our experiment to see if by that age the infants already has a very classic like affective touch response that is for affective touch of somatosensory regions being activated and also social regions. But for non-affective touch would be the spoon condition, for example, you wouldn't have the social activation. And then we move on to our behavioral measurements. It's 9 minutes of interaction and it's basically divided in 3 minutes with toys, 3 minutes no toys, and 3 minutes of a challenging toy. This challenging toy is for the 6 months babies. We have a different one for the 10 months. And what we can analyze from these interactions is the maternal touch, so how the moms touch the baby, maternal sensitivity, and maternal mindedness. Here's the lab TAP protocol, which is going to explain. We are using 3 episodes. This is when the infant is 12 months, and it's basically designed to evoke some types of emotions on the baby. And this is all predefined, we just adjusted to our lab. But to evoke fear, we have the unpredictable toy episode. And it's basically a toy that has to have a kind of scary look and it's gonna do some unpredictable movements. So we have this set, the baby's sitting here. The mom is asked to be there with a very neutral face. And then we have a person hidden behind is gonna control the toy. It's 10 seconds of the toy moving forward, 5 seconds moving away. We repeat this 3 times. And on the 3rd time, we press a remote control and this dinosaur does kind of a movement and rolls. To evoke joy, it's basically a modified peekaboo. We have 5 doors and we ask the mom to put her face behind the door. We knock and ask her to, when we open the door, to say peekaboo with a happy face in a joyful voice. And we just open the doors, keep knocking, asking where's mommy, and open, and she says peekaboo. And at the door number 4 and 5, we open 2 wrong doors before the baby actually finding the mom. To evoke anger or frustration, we have arm restraint protocol, which is basically 30 seconds of the baby being able to interact with this toy, which is not very infant toy, but it's very similar to what the authors use on the original coding scheme. And it's something that the baby typically never saw, so it's gonna want to explore and see how it works. It has 30 seconds of interacting with it. And then after 30 seconds, we ask the mom to take the toy away if the baby's holding it, put on that mark here on the table, and restrict the arm exactly how she's doing in this picture for 30 seconds. If the baby is fine with it, we repeat it 2 times, but if any emotional peak is reached, we stop the procedure to not stress the baby more than that would be ethical okay to do it. We also,
Sorry, do you do them in the same order?
yes, it's always this order. So it's fear, joy, and then anger. Specifically because the anger tends to be the one that buzzes the baby more and we cannot do much after that. And then again, at 12 months, we have hair cortisol data collection. We collect infant hair cortisol. Our team just did a publication on how we are collecting hair cortisol on infants and what kind of things that you need to take care of. This is not part of my thesis, so I'm not super involved on that. I just know how to collect the data because I've been collecting this data quite oftenly. But they just did this publication on how to collect hair cortisol from infant's hair. We also assess maternal hair cortisol.
Sorry, can I ask
Yeah.
about the cortisol? Because I don't
Yeah.
really know much about that.
Yeah.
Is it kind of a measure of stress over time, or is
Yes,
it like a
it's
snapshot?
chronic. It's chronic. Hair cortisol tends to be a more chronic measurement. The reason we chose hair cortisol over like
Saliva.
Right.
saliva or blood, it's less stressful to the infant to have this collected.
Yeah.
And is also a chronicle measurement would be more interesting for us as well.
And just another thing, it's like, yeah, it's also something, not something I know a lot about, but is cortisol involved in other things other than stress? Is there anything else that might be a reason why someone's got like a naturally high cortisol level, or is it, do we know that it correlates very, very highly with like subjective experience of stress?
It tends to be, like the chronic
Yeah.
cortisol tends to be associated with chronic stress
Yeah.
or more stressful environments. I think they explored that on the paper, to be honest. The cortisol part is the one that
Okay.
I'm least involved, so I have least
Okay.
expertise to answer any questions. But I know they are currently analyzing it and they're gonna start working on this data soon. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'm sure you can contact the girls on the on this paper, the other end, they
Okay.
have lots of information
Yeah.
to
I
provide.
think it also
Good,
varies
thanks.
by like time of day, like circadian.
Mm.
cortisol
So I wonder,
rhythm.
like, yeah, how the hair would affect it versus blood or saliva.
Because if
If
it was,
the hair is more consistent.
because if it was, like, I guess that would control for the fact that it happens at different times of day, because it's more of a measure
Yeah.
Yeah.
of overall.
It's more chronicle measure and it's more something like residual instead of the one that is productive. I don't know, if I stress you right now, you're gonna produce cortisol right now, but what goes to the hair is more of a something that is metabolism and it's
Okay.
residual metabolism that goes to the hair.
Okay.
So a bit more of what I'm actually doing, what I'm actually involved in is the maternal touching behaviors and the infant neuroactivation to touch and its relationship to emotional regulation during the first year of life. So what I'm trying to do with my PG is to, one, assess the predictive role of different types of maternal touch that occurs during a mother and child interaction when the baby is 6 months on the infant's neural response to touch. The other thing I'm trying to do is to analyze the predictive role of different types of maternal touch that occurs during a mother and child interaction. Again, same interaction at 6 months on the infant's emotional regulation when they are 12 months. And finally, we are trying to build kind of a mediation model that would explain infant's emotional regulation via infant's neural response to touch. So we have like the relationship between maternal touch and infant's emotional regulation, and we believe this is mediated by the infant neural response to touch. For the maternal touching behaviors, we developed a coding scheme that was based on a literature review and other coding schemes that we found. The reason why we chose to develop one is to incorporate exactly what type of variables that we thought would be useful for our studies and to our research questions. So I basically took everything that happened that was mentioned on the literature review on coding schemes to maternal touch or caregiver touch and listened and all, saw a bunch of interactions, saw if what show ups and what doesn't, and then have this final version. When you have incidental touch, would be more something that you bumps in the baby. We have affectionate touch that is to show affection to the baby. And this happens in neutral or positive interactions, or to bust the interaction. If they are playing, they're laughing at each other, gazing at each other, and then the mom like kisses the baby, hugs the baby to kind of amplify this interaction. And this type of touch involves caressing, but also involves hugging and kissing. Static touch would be just having physical contact with the proximity. Playful stimulation would be playing with the baby. Instrumental touch would be more caregiver behaviors like cleaning and things like that. Attentional directing would be like poking the baby to get his attention, or during specifically doing the challenge interactions to modulate the way that the infant plays. Regulatory touch would be to calm the baby, so hug when it's in stress or caress when it's stress. And intrusive negative touch would be our negative category of touch, would be rough touches that restrain the infant's movements. Something that we also incorporate on this coding scheme, that if the baby responds negatively to the mother touch, so if she kisses and hugs and the baby tries to push her away, or if she's tickling the baby and the baby's trying to push it away, we classify this as intrusive negative touch.
But how do you differentiate between 2 and 7?
It's what's happening prior to the interaction. So if they are on a neutral or positive interaction and this happened, we consider affectionate touch. But if the infant's crying and the mother holds the baby to hugs the baby to calm him, then it's regulatory touch.
I'm so sorry, maybe this is not an interesting question, but could there be regulatory in other direction? So if I guess I'm thinking if the infant seems bored, a playful / stimulating touch would also be regulatory, maybe because it's bringing them to a sort of parent-defined optimal region of arousal.
We try to be like, not sure how would apply that, but we try to measure what the mom was trying to do with that touch.
Mm.
And the regulatory would be like to remove the negative emotion more than creating, I don't know, a positive.
Mm.
Because typically mothers, they are okay if the baby is neutral or just there peacefully. They tend to act or have a specific behavior when the baby's fuzzy or demonstrating signals of getting fuzzy. So that's how we define that.
That makes sense.
And the coding scheme is also available in Portuguese and English.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Tom's, I think that's a slightly different question because you're talking about happy versus sad,
Oh,
whereas Tom's talking
Yeah.
about kind of highly aroused versus low aroused. So
Yeah.
he's talking about kind of sitting there drifting off to sleep, and you can be happy and drifting off to sleep, or sad and drifting off to sleep. This is, you can be happy and highly aroused, or happy and
Yeah.
and sad and highly
Yeah.
aroused.
We consider this playful touch.
Yeah.
It's quite unusual to like almost sleep on this
Yeah, in
state
this type
of
of setting, that's
yeah,
why.
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of the type of setting that we have, it's not very common, especially because they are 6 months old and they are in a room that they never saw. They're playing with the mom. The mom is asked to play as she normally would, so the baby's typically activated on this circumstance either way because it's very new to them. So they're not like, I kind of don't want to fall asleep or to be in that position in this moment. But I mean, it could be used in, I don't know, younger infants that were different scenario.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So for the new response to touch, I use only the mother condition and when the baby is 10 months. And it's exactly the same thing that I already told.
Sorry,
And-
I missed it before. Are they looking at something on their screen?
Yes, they have like a non-social animation, like some colors and things playing just to keep their attention looking forward.
Okay,
And we have some non-social toys as well, so they get distracted.
okay.
But it's not, we are not interested on them to like, for them to look
Yeah.
at something. We just don't want them to look to the person that is doing the touch.
Yeah.
And finally, the infant's emotional regulation, what I do use is this behavior assessment. And this I put in the order of priority for me to include on my thesis. So even though the data collection order is like fear, joy, and anger, for me to include on the thesis is more important to have the anger, the joy, and then at least the fear. The anger episode, I chose this to be the priority because literature is more extensive on the topic of negative emotions. And between fear and anger, this is the one that we have more successfully applied because sometimes on the fear episode, they doesn't get scared or is not afraid of the dinosaur, sometimes wants to play. And in the other hand, for the anger, they always get angry and frustrated at some point when you restrain their arms. And then the joy episode is because basically we don't have much about positive emotions. We have lots of studies saying that maternal touch can help the baby to regulate or to calm themselves or to emotional regulation when the baby is stressed. But we don't have much about how it might boost, for example, positive responses or positive interactions. And the reason why fear is less just because it not always works. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the baby simply doesn't care about the stimuli or doesn't care about
But how many kids get scared by the dinosaur?
yeah, so this is
Oh.
exactly the current status of the project. We finalized data collection. At the 6 months, we had 100 infants total, and the ones that came back for 10 and 12 months was 89. So it's quite good nutrition rates on a longitudinal design, especially because we asked the mother and the baby to come to the lab. And like similar to London, São Paulo has a crazy traffic and everything, so the mother has to come. So we are quite happy about our nutrition rates and how it's going so far. And the maternal touching behaviors, we have the coding ongoing. We are predicted to end this week, and we are actually going to end the coding this week. And we already validated all the trials for the NIRS. We have 65 babies that has valid trials for the mother condition at 10 months. And with good NIRS quality, we have 50. And this was basically the presentation. Have 10 minutes for questions or anything. I do have some preliminary results that I might talk about, but when I say preliminary, they're quite preliminary and they got ready yesterday, so they're not super open, but
I have a question about
Yeah.
the coding. So if you go back to the 3 conditions right
Yeah.
there, how do you code the anger, joy, and fear? Like, what are the
yeah.
signs you're looking for?
For when they propose this protocol, they also proposed a coding scheme, and we're using the author's original coding scheme to basically code it. And it's based on infants' facial response and also vocalizations and body response, if it increases or decreases movements.
I have a question. Are you planning to use the touching data from the free play session for some analysis for the condition in the lab where the researcher touched the baby? I'm thinking about individual difference and how maybe the frequency of touch in general or the affectionate touch is more common in some diets. The effect
Yeah.
that the touch of the researcher have in the baby could also vary.
Yeah, well, it is actually our research question, is to see how the variations in the way that the mother touches the baby might build a trajectory that
I
leads
see.
to a different type of activation when the baby is touched, believing to be touched by the mother. So this is mainly our research. question. Yes, and actually affectionate touch is the one that we are primarily interested in, and the one that is presenting results.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a question, Livia?
Yeah, of course.
Hi. I wanted to ask your opinion on whether you think that even though the babies think that they are being touched with the mom, do you think that if they were actually being touched with their mom, there would be differences in their responses? Because I'm just thinking that some moms might have very different styles of touch, like some might just like put their hands on their shoulders, others might draw circles and things like this, whether like the style could have an impact on the responses that you see.
Yes, it's quite possible. It's one of the reasons why we decided to have this kind of setup where we are doing the touch, basically because we could not control exactly how the moms touch the baby. And if we incorporate, the mom do the touch, we might have a lot of individual variances and a lot of things to accommodate. And we need to have a much, much larger sample size that we could not afford having 100 for infants. It's already quite a lot. But yeah, it's quite possible, specifically because most studies on affective touch, they are quite specific. They are about exactly same speed, and something that has been recently discussed on the literature on the area is that most studies are done with a brush, and we are one of the first ones that are actually using human hand. There's only another one that used human head, and they use hand versus spoon. That's why we kind of replicated this paradigm. But yes, the response to affective touch and how much these individual differences and also other aspects of the touch, how the direction is going or temperature or some like pressure, how this is integrated in the system. It's something that has been debated, and there's quite few things on the field right now. So yeah, probably would.
Cool, thanks.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure.
No,
oh, sorry.
where are you, Vicky?
Sorry,
Haven't-
can I have a look at the mediation scheme again?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm gonna have a question, but I just wanna.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just because. And it's again, it's not something that I know a lot about, but with the different types of regulation, is that there's like different kinds of motion processing going on. And so I'm wondering if that correlates with, or can explain, like, or would explain any of the correlations with, like, you know, optodes in the parietal cortex or areas like the temporal parietal junction that also show that kind of overlap with motion processing. So do you think that basically, like, long story short, do you think that any of the differences in motion between the different self-regulation tasks would be a confounding factor for your analysis?
We're not quite sure yet, because this is something that has been theorized a lot. That basically the touch would have like this primary sensation, and this would build up to a more social response and everything. But exactly how it happens, it's still something that very, very few people is exploring and incorporating some new response. It's quite new, so we can find basically anything at this point. Something that we have, it's a very specific neural response, and it's very too specifically touch. We don't have any other stimulation. So yeah, it's possible that we have some confounding variables on how this works.
Thanks.
Can you go first if you want? So I'm just trying to get my head around how this part links to the spoon versus the hand and the researcher versus the mother. So I'm guessing you're predicting that if the infant response is really positive to the mother's touch and the mother is affectionate, their emotional regulation will be better.
Yes.
How do those other measures fit in with the?
Oh, I don't actually use the other measurements. They are
Okay.
part of the project, but the variables that I choose to incorporate on the thesis are just this ones, which is basically the maternal touch from that specifically one experiment. So I don't use the unfamiliar woman, and I also don't use the
Okay.
kiss bone paradigm. I just use those.
Okay.
It would be too much to incorporate all of this in one thesis.
Yeah, so one thing that might be tricky is because the maternal touch is very hard. So we're used to doing, like, I'm doing something quite similar where you just record a lot of data and then you look for naturally occurring instances of something during the day. Yeah, and then you kind of, because you've got lots of data and you're having lots of different things, you can kind of control for stuff within it. So compared to this type of the paradigm where you're very much doing things in a predetermined order. Yeah. So one of the things that's tricky is when you're just coding the mother's behavior in a 6-month thing. Yeah, that's already going to be influenced by the child. That the tricky thing. So, you know, it may be that some children like calm down quickly from being touched. It may be that some children don't calm down quickly from being touched. Yeah, and that will have already affected how the mother interacts with the child by 6 months. And that, you know, will link directly to emotion regulation. You know that. But also they can't get a chance to do regulatory behaviors unless the child's getting upset. So you'll probably get more regulatory behaviors in a parent, from the parent of a child who gets more upset at 6 months. So you're effectively finding that emotion regulation at 6 months correlates with emotion regulation at 12 months. And it's not to do with the maternal touch, it's just if the child, do you see what I'm saying? So it's just tricky. I think you're going to find it tricky to pull apart some of these
It is challenging. Something that is definitely a limitation is the fact that this type of interaction does not evoke regulatory touch by its basis, because it's the baby playing and it's not super common. It happens sometimes the baby get fuzzy or get upset, but it's not super common. We do think that if we had a different style of task, maybe we'd have completely different results.
Yeah.
But we are also kind of, this is more naturalistic interaction, the closest we can get in a lab setting. So it's a bit of a measurement, what can be done, what we're already interested on, what's going on, and what's possible. But yes, this is definitely something that we have to address in the limitations, that
interesting to look at,
regulatory touch would be super important, especially for the outcome, but it's not something that occurs very oftenly on that setup. we do have the affectionate touch happening on kind of regular basis, and it varies between infants, which is something that we are interested in as well to see how much it varies. And the preliminary results that we basically got yesterday is that we do have a link between the duration between the affectionate touch, and the response is in the middle temporal gyrus for the 10 months. So we do have a positive correlation for that first
Yeah.
aim.
But then, do you think that's because of differences in the mother? Or because the mother has learned that the child responds to affectionate touch, so she does more of it?
There's huge possibilities that maternal sensitivity may have already played a role, because if the mother is very sensitive to the baby and how it responds, she already adjusts. By 6 months, she already adjusts her tactical behavior. Something that we are trying to think on how to incorporate is the fact that touch varies a lot according to the infant's age. So we might have to accommodate something in here to explain the way that mothers, probably more sensitive mothers, adjust their tactical behavior to the infant's developmental stage, to the infant's personal temperament, whatever the baby's manifesting. So that's something that impacts in there for sure.
Yeah, great. We should probably wrap up because I know some people have got 1 o'clock. Should we give Livia a big round of applause? So we're gonna stay for lunch, but unfortunately we couldn't order sandwiches because the person who ordered sandwiches is on holiday. So why, if you haven't, any chance that you could walk Vivian to get some lunch and then we'll pay. And then come back and we'll eat it together here. Does that sound good? Yeah. Does that sound okay, Livia?
Yeah, of course.
Great. And then everyone say that. Anyone, sorry, any questions for anyone at home who doesn't, they're not gonna get a chance to answer questions over lunch? Everyone happy? Yeah. All right then.
Thank
Um,
you.
Our
Bye.
contact, if anything
Yeah.
pops up,
Yeah,
feel
thanks,
free to.
guys. Thanks.